Hey there guys, welcome back. Today I wanted to show you my latest rainwater harvesting project, and probably the simplest one I've ever created. It involves a billboard tarp up there on that hill back there, some PVC pipe, and an IBC tote, although you could really use any container, a barrel, or a simple hole in the ground if you got clay soil. But anyway, that's what it is. I'm going to start off showing you a little diagram of kind of how it works, and then I'll show you the components that I have laid out and how I have them laid out, and then at the end I'll show you kind of how it works. And if we don't get any rain, I'll just dump some water down it so you can kind of see the water flowing.
Now, before we take a look at the physical components of this system, let's first start off by looking at a bird's eye view of the core concept of how this works. Essentially, what we're trying to create is a difference in elevation, or an elevation change. Normally, we achieve this in a structure like a house or a garage with your gutters by the structure simply being higher than the water tank or wherever you're wanting to put the water. The only problem with that is that costs money. And in this case, I'm wanting to collect some extra water as cheaply as possible, and in this case, I'm wanting to use the topography of the land that already exists to help flow water from a flat surface on into a tank, and that's where the billboard tarp comes in. The tarp is essentially going to be acting as a roof, and by grading or sloping the land underneath the tarp and berming up the edges, we can direct the water flow towards one end or one corner of the tarp so that it can eventually be tied into a pipe that runs all the way down to our collection tank. And when it rains, the water should hit the tarp and eventually flow towards the drain corner of the tarp and eventually into the pipe and on down into the tank. And this will all be achieved assuming you have that elevation change that we talked about earlier. And here's what the actual collection site looks like. I started off by clearing out a small rectangular area on a relatively flat hilltop and just ensured that it sloped slightly towards one corner. You'll see the bermed up edges all around there. After ensuring that the final slope and grade of this flattened area would indeed flow the water towards that one corner, I then laid out my billboard tarp and got it kind of lined up and positioned over all of the bermed up edges. After that, I then spaced rocks evenly over the entire tarp to keep it down in the winds, and then backfilled dirt over all of the edges. The drain pipe was placed at the lowest corner of the collection tarp and then run all the way down to the IBC tote. I eventually added a little mesh screen to help filter out any debris that may get in there, but you'll see that's what the run looks like. And one quick thing to point out, before I even started the project, I actually ran a string line from the point of collection where that drain pipe was, all the way down to where I was guesstimating the upper end of the IBC tote would be. And that's how I ensured that I would get my proper amount of fall to where the water would actually flow through this pipe and eventually into the IBC tote. And since it was pretty apparent that we weren't going to get any rain for a few days, I just went ahead and did the bucket test, as you'll see right here. Where I just dumped a couple 5-gallon buckets full of water. You'll see the water kind of collecting in the collection point down there, and then I'm going to walk real fast down the trail and you can see it actually flowing into the tank.
Well guys, that's pretty much it. I hope this was helpful and maybe gave you some ideas in case you happen to be looking at a rainwater harvesting project of your own. I think this provides a reasonably good option for those of you looking to collect a good bit of rainwater for a very small investment, as well as for those of you who might be in the tiny house movement or may not have a lot of extra roof space. Setting something up like this can help you get that extra rainwater that maybe you wouldn't be able to collect otherwise. Also remember, you could definitely do some modifications to make this even cheaper. I'm using an IBC tote here, but you could easily just dig a hole and line it with a billboard tarp, and that would enable you to hold a good bit of water as well for much cheaper than doing rain barrels or an IBC tote. As well as the fact, if you don't have any topography, you could simply lay the billboard tarp down and have it running into that hole, and then you wouldn't have to have the elevation difference. So as always guys, I appreciate you watching. Please hit the subscribe button if you liked this, and we'll see you next time.